Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Jennifer Bellamy. We are following breaking news right now in the city of Atlanta, where just minutes ago, Atlanta police held a news conference about the death of a 39-year-old man, Kenneth Bailey, also known as rapper Young Scooter. 11 Alive's Cody Alcorn is live for us tonight right outside of Atlanta Police Headquarters. Cody, you just stepped out of that briefing from police. A lot going on tonight. What have you learned?
On March 28th, 2025, a day that should have been filled with celebration, joy, and the excitement of a man reaching a significant milestone in life, turned into a heartbreaking tragedy. The streets of Atlanta, a city where the pulse of hip-hop beats strong, were shaken to their core. Young Scooter, one of Atlanta's most beloved figures in rap, was taken from us, at just 39 years old. But as the news spread, the questions began. The details? They just didn't make sense. His passing was a shock to the fans, the industry, and the city itself. Was this a tragic accident, or was there something far darker at play? Some say it was a random act, a freak encounter with the wrong people at the wrong time. But in the corners of the city where rumors run deep, the streets are already talking. The whispers grow louder with each passing hour. Was young Scooter gunned down in cold blood? Was there a deeper reason behind this fateful night? Or did the very people who were supposed to protect him become the ones to end it? The story is more than just another celebrity death. It's a tale filled with mystery, unanswered questions, and a deep sense of disbelief. Young Scooter wasn't just another rapper. He was a legend, a voice for the streets of Atlanta, and an icon whose influence transcended music. And now, his untimely death has left a city mourning, but also searching for answers. What really happened on that night, and why does the story feel so incomplete? The speculation has only intensified, as theories about police involvement, potential cover-ups, and even industry connections swirl in the air. Some are saying it's all tied to something far greater than we can see, something that reaches deep into the shadowy corners of the music world. But as we dig deeper into this story, one thing becomes clear: there's much more to this tragedy than meets the eye. And the questions only keep piling up. Stay with us as we unravel the mystery surrounding the tragic death of young Scooter, and explore the truths that might be waiting just beneath the surface. Before we dive deeper into today's chilling case, we'd love for you to join our community. If you enjoy these stories, please take a second to subscribe. Subscribing ensures you never miss an update and helps our channel grow, allowing us to continue bringing you fresh, in-depth true crime stories every day. We value your thoughts, so feel free to share your views on this case in the comments below, and let us know where you're tuning in from. Your participation truly makes a difference in expanding this community and raising awareness. Now, let's continue with the story. The night of March 28, 2025, began with the promise of celebration, a milestone, a birthday, the kind of moment that many people dream of. For young Scooter, the rapper who had become synonymous with Atlanta's vibrant hip-hop scene, it should have been a night of joy, surrounded by friends, fans, and the city that had embraced him as one of its own. But instead, the evening would end in tragedy. Reports started flooding in just hours later, claiming that young Scooter had been shot near the State Farm Arena, a place most people associate with excitement, but that night, it became a grim backdrop to an unfolding story. The first few hours were filled with confusion. The cause of death remained unclear, and official reports offered little in the way of answers. The media was hesitant, offering only the barest of details. But as the night wore on, the rumors started to grow. Was it a random shooting? A senseless act of violence? Or was there something far darker behind the death of one of Atlanta's most iconic figures? Speculation spread like wildfire, and among the whispers, one theory began to gain traction more than others: that young Scooter had been killed by the police. And just like that, the seeds of doubt were planted. What initially seemed like a tragic, yet understandable, incident began to feel more like a cover-up in the making. What started as rumors on the streets of Atlanta soon spread to social media, with sources, some credible, some less so, claiming that law enforcement was involved. The notion that the police had played a part in young Scooter's death seemed unfathomable, yet it was gaining momentum. Those who had been close to the scene, those who had witnessed the chaos firsthand, began to speak up. The authorities, meanwhile, remained tight-lipped, withholding any information about the details surrounding the shooting. Why wouldn't they just clarify the situation? Why wasn't the public being told exactly what happened? And why was this taking so long to get sorted out? It didn't take long for people to start questioning the narrative being spun by law enforcement. According to sources close to the situation, some claimed that the rapper wasn't caught in a crossfire, as the media had initially suggested. No, they said. He had been targeted, deliberately, and there were whispers that the police had been the ones to pull the trigger. Young Scooter, an artist who had spent years building a name for himself, wasn't just another rapper. He wasn't just someone whose music played in the clubs or on the streets, he was part of the fabric of Atlanta. His death, on the heels of what should have been a momentous occasion, didn't sit right with the people who had followed his journey. This was a man they loved, a man whose music had defined a generation, a man who represented the voice of the streets. For him to be taken down, allegedly by the very people who were supposed to protect him, didn't add up. Why would the police, the ones sworn to protect and serve, be involved in something so horrific? Why would they have taken action that resulted in the death of one of the city's most cherished artists, a man who had given so much to Atlanta's culture? Was it possible that young Scooter, on his birthday, was in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or, as some are starting to suggest, was this an orchestrated event? Was there something more to his death than simple police error or street violence? The more the streets talked, the more the theories evolved. Could this have been a case of mistaken identity, a misstep that escalated out of control? Or was it something even darker, a message? A power play that no one could see coming? People began to wonder whether there was more to this than just another tragic incident. Was it a cover-up in the making? A conspiracy too complex for the public to comprehend? One thing became clear, the official story wasn't the whole truth. The more the rumors spread, the more people began to question whether the truth would ever be fully revealed. If the police were involved in any way, could the public ever get to the bottom of it? Could they trust the very people who were supposed to protect them to give an honest account of what happened that night? Theories abound, each one as disturbing as the last. Some believe this was just another example of the police being too quick to pull the trigger. Others suggest that there's something deeper, something much darker at play, something that the public isn't meant to know. Could young Scooter's death be connected to the music industry itself? Could there be an agenda at play, one far beyond a simple police mistake or a random act of violence? Could the police have been involved in a cover-up? Could they have been trying to suppress something that the public wasn't meant to see? Were they protecting their own, or was young Scooter just another pawn in a much larger game? These are the questions that remain unanswered. And as the details continue to trickle out, the truth seems to slip further and further away. What do you think really happened that night? Was this simply a police mishap, a case of poor judgment? Or was there something more, a hidden truth that we're just beginning to understand? The streets are talking, the theories are piling up, and the questions keep growing. But for now, we're left with one undeniable fact: young Scooter is gone, and the truth about his death is still out of reach. What's the real story? And how long will it take before the truth finally comes to light? It was meant to be a night of celebration. A night where young Scooter would bask in the love of his city, the same city that had helped shape him into a legend. But instead, the evening would end in tragedy. The reports started coming in. At first, they painted the picture of a random shooting, an unfortunate accident in the chaos of a late-night incident. But as the hours passed, the streets of Atlanta began to whisper a different story, one that didn't align with what the authorities were saying. Could it have been just another senseless act of violence, or was this the result of something far more sinister? Was this a tragic mistake, or was it the result of excessive force, something far darker at play? People who had been near the scene of the incident started to come forward, offering their version of events. Their stories didn't match up with the official narrative. They spoke of a confrontation, not a shootout. According to them, there was no exchange of gunfire. They didn't see young Scooter firing shots. Instead, they saw something else, something that many would describe as an unjustifiable use of force by the police. The witnesses were adamant. The police weren't acting in self-defense or trying to subdue a violent suspect. They were too quick to escalate the situation. But what was it that caused the officers to act this way? Was there something they were trying to cover up? Was it a decision made in the heat of the moment, or was it something premeditated? Was this truly a case of excessive force, or was there a deeper motive for the police's actions? The theories began to multiply. Some said the police acted too quickly, too violently, without regard for the human life before them. Others said the police saw something in young Scooter, a man they were trained to handle with caution, but could it have gone so wrong, so quickly? Were they too eager to end a situation they didn't fully understand? Or, as some are starting to believe, did they see young Scooter's presence as a threat that required an immediate response? The streets had their own theories. They weren't convinced that the death was a random act, as some would like to believe. There was talk of a larger narrative, a backdrop to this tragic night that the public wasn't being told. Was this an example of police overreach, or was there a greater story that has yet to be uncovered? What's clear is this: the official reports don't add up. The more you listen to those who were there, the more you begin to question what really happened. Could the police have been responsible for the death of young Scooter, a beloved figure in the community? Or was there a deeper, darker force at play? Do you believe this was a case of excessive force? Or could there be something more to the story? We're left with more questions than answers, and as the details begin to surface, we're left wondering, how long until the truth finally comes to light? What do you think really happened? Was young Scooter's death truly an accident, or is there something more hidden beneath the surface? Let us know what you think in the comments. Atlanta's rap scene is more than just music. It's a battleground of street politics, a complicated relationship with law enforcement, and an industry constantly under a dark cloud of scrutiny. From the highs of stardom to the lows of violent losses, the price of fame in Atlanta can be steep. Young Scooter, a man who rose from the streets to become a beloved figure, is now a casualty of this very system. But was his death just another result of the dangers that come with the territory, or was there something far more insidious at play? As the rumors spread, some began to connect the dots between young Scooter's death and the darker elements of the music industry. Was his passing just another tragic consequence of a world where violence, greed, and exploitation run rampant? Or was it something deeper, a part of a larger, darker narrative that has existed for years? In the shadows of the Atlanta music scene, some speculate that young Scooter's death might have been tied to something even more sinister, the so-called Curse of 1017. This is the label he was most closely associated with, the one that helped shape his career and brought him to the world's attention. But some believe there's a darker side to the label, one that profits more from the death of its artists than their success. Theories circulate that certain labels have a tendency to see their artists as more valuable in death than alive, and young Scooter could have become yet another casualty of this chilling truth. Could it be that his death wasn't just a random act of violence, but part of something much larger, a ritual, a sacrifice that the industry has long been accused of? There are those who point to the stories of other artists who have died under mysterious circumstances while signed to labels like 1017. The connections are eerie, with some even suggesting that these deaths serve a greater purpose, one that benefits the industry financially and reputationally. Life insurance policies, posthumous album sales, and a surge in streaming numbers after an artist's death, these are the realities of the music business that no one talks about openly. Could young Scooter have been another pawn in this game, his life lost to fuel the system that ultimately made him a star? As these conspiracy theories gain traction, the questions become harder to ignore. Could young Scooter's death really be tied to his association with 1017, a label with a long and troubled history? Is it possible that his death was just the latest chapter in a tragic pattern that stretches back years? With the rise of internet speculation and the murmurs of those who know the industry's dark side, the theories only grow more disturbing. Could it be that labels like 1017, as some have claimed, profit more when an artist dies than when they're alive? What does that say about the true cost of fame in this business? And more importantly, what does it mean for the artists who are still out there, living, breathing, and chasing the dream that could ultimately cost them their lives? What do you think? Do record labels benefit from the tragic deaths of their artists, or is this just another example of a dangerous and violent culture that feeds on the very lives it claims to uplift? Is there something behind this pattern, or are we simply seeing the dark realities of an industry that operates in shadows? Let us know your thoughts. What do you believe is really going on behind the scenes? The music industry has always been more than just the art. It's a business, a machine driven by profits, and at its core, the value of an artist is measured not only by their talent but by how much money they can generate. But when an artist's life is tragically cut short, the stakes become even higher. Young Scooter's death is the latest chapter in a long and painful history of artists who've met untimely ends, and it raises an uncomfortable question. How much does the music industry really benefit when an artist dies? And more chillingly, could their death be seen as just another way for record labels to cash in? As we look deeper into the financial side of the business, it's clear that the tragedy of an artist's death isn't just a somber event for their family and fans, it's a financial windfall for those who control their music. The music industry has always had a dark underbelly, one that profits off the public's insatiable appetite for tragedy, for loss, for mourning. When an artist passes away, their music gets streamed more than ever. Albums that had once stalled in the charts suddenly surge, old tracks find new audiences, and the sales numbers soar. But there's more to it than just the public's emotional response. When an artist dies, there are financial mechanisms in place that trigger massive payouts, life insurance policies on the artist, the insurance companies that pay out, and the labels that collect those checks. The unfortunate reality is that in the music business, an artist can be worth more dead than alive. Industry insiders, people who have spent years in the business, often speak of this dark truth. They talk about how record labels take out life insurance policies on their artists, sometimes before the first record even drops. These policies ensure that when tragedy strikes, the financial losses are covered, and the company doesn't lose out on the future earnings they had projected. When young Scooter died, his music sales spiked. His streams surged. And somewhere in a high-rise office, executives were undoubtedly smiling, not because of the loss, but because of the profits that were now flowing in. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but this is the reality many artists face. Their worth is often measured in dollars and cents, by how much they can generate, by how many albums they can sell, and by the value of their life once it's over. And then there's the question that nobody wants to ask: are these artists, whose music speaks to millions, nothing more than assets, valued only as long as they're generating revenue? The truth behind the industry's practices is a murky one, and as young Scooter's tragic death is examined through this lens, it forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality: is the industry profiting from the pain of its own artists? How much is the music industry really profiting off the deaths of its stars? Are the people behind the labels merely waiting for their artists to die, collecting the spoils of their passing, before moving on to the next one? Or are they simply doing what any business would do, securing their investments? These are questions we don't often hear answered. But the pattern is undeniable: the music industry profits from death. And while this may seem like just another tragic reality, it's one that's as profitable as it is unsettling. So, as the details of young Scooter's death continue to unfold, we have to ask ourselves, what price are we willing to pay for the music that moves us? And more importantly, what price are the artists really paying? Do you believe the industry is exploiting these deaths for profit? Do the labels care more about the bottom line than the lives of their artists? Let us know your thoughts below. Young Scooter's legacy in Atlanta is etched deeply in the streets he rapped about, in the clubs where his tracks blasted, and in the hearts of those who saw him rise from the depths of the city to become one of its most influential figures in hip-hop. His music, raw and unapologetic, will continue to echo through the city long after his tragic passing. But while his legacy will endure, his death leaves us with more questions than answers. Was it just another senseless tragedy, a random act of violence, or is there something darker lurking beneath the surface? A story that we may never fully understand? The unanswered questions are still there, questions that refuse to fade with time. Why did it have to happen the way it did? What was the true cause of young Scooter's death? And, more troubling, what are the forces that may have been at play behind the scenes? As we reflect on his life, his music, and the lasting impact he left, we must also consider the mysteries that remain unsolved. But one thing is certain, young Scooter's story is one that deserves to be told, not just for what he contributed to music, but for the questions his death raised. Questions that, whether we find the answers or not, will continue to resonate throughout the city and the industry he helped shape. As we wait for more details to emerge, we turn to you, the audience, the people who know this city, this music, and these stories best. What do you think really happened that night? Was young Scooter's death the result of a tragic accident, or does the truth lie somewhere far darker? Do you think the police were involved? Could his death have been tied to something deeper, an industry sacrifice, or something else entirely? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments below, share your theories, and let's keep the conversation going. If you want to stay updated as more details unfold, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back with more updates on this unfolding story.